Hello guys, this video hopefully will help you out if you have a problem with your brake system. Um, this vehicle, it is 2014 Ford Taurus that I had a problem with for the brake system. And I'm gonna give you a few tips. Hopefully those tips will help you with your issue if you have an issue with the brake system on those Fords or any other vehicles. But weirdly enough, Fords, they have a problem with their system, and they're common, and they are more common than other vehicles. This 2014 I owned since it was brand new. It did about a year ago. I replaced the front rotors and the brakes all together. No problems there. This year I replaced only the front brake pads and the front rotors. Keep in mind that I had no problem with that vehicle. I hit the road after replacing the front, just the front rotors and the brake pads. The light for engine, surfacing the engine came on default, and then that information light came on. What else? Check engine light, I believe. Traction control, hill assist keep coming on. ABS light, all the lights came on the dash, not even a mile from after fixing the car. I came back, turned off the car, started again, everything is normal. I drive it again, the light pop on, and this message comes on, and it start making this weird noise, peeping noise. And I was surprised because it's not my first time that I've done brakes. So I decided to drive it more, a few miles more. And when I drove it more, I came back and I had one thing in mind to see if the brake system is locked up. So I had a bottle of water and I sprayed water on all four calipers or rotors while they're on, right after I parked. And interestingly, that the rear brakes is smoking. They were the rear calipers were froze, and the front were good. And that kind of threw me for a loop because I did not touch the brake pads. I did not touch the rears. I did not take the tires off. I did not touch anything in the back. So why the back is locked up, calipers, and the front are free, and I did not work on the back. So that kind of, it was a weird problem. So first thing I looked at is the fluid, and that's the things you check when you have especially frozen calipers. I checked for the fluid and it was dirty. And I owned the car since it was brand new, and I've never changed the fluid for the brakes. And you're supposed to do it every 60,000 or so. Depends on the vehicle. I believe around 50, 60,000 you should replace depends on your car, obviously. Completely replace the fluid for the brakes. So I went and got DOT4 brake fluid. I got two big bottles, and then I cracked the opening on the back of the caliper for the rear both, and I was very surprised how dirty they were. And I kept going, and I ended up doing a bleeding system for the brake system for the whole thing, basically front and rear, and got all the dirty fluid out, and the problem went away. I was surprised. After I've done that, I went drove it again, no problem whatsoever, no lights on the dash, and the vehicle was driving great. So that's something to keep in mind. So if you check your fluid first in the bottle, If it was dirty, then in the back where the calipers are at, probably they're even worse than that. And so it doesn't hurt to do that anyways. The two bottles, I believe I paid around $7, $8 each, and that fixed the problem. Now I had in the past, since we're talking about brake, there's a guy had a 2012 Ford Escape, and his brakes were locking up all the time. He went put new calipers, new brake pads, and new rotors, and his brakes were still going so hot and catching up really bad. And he told me about the story. He's a buddy of mine. I know him, and I drive a big truck, so I don't have a lot of downtime to help with vehicles sometimes. But so I felt bad for him because he drove it for a while with those with this kind of issue. So I told him I think I know what it is. I believe because the guy, he is not mechanically inclined, and he's just he knows about the parts and all that, but he's not professional. And so I believe when he done the brake system, when he done the calipers and the rotors for the vehicle, he let the calipers hanging down, which is really bad thing to do. If you ever do brake system, you never let the caliper hanging by the hose. You have to give the caliper support so it does the tension does not come on the rubber hose. You don't want to hurt that, because what happened, the if you let the caliper down, the caliper is heavy and it's gonna pull on that rubber brake hose, and then when you stretch it back, when you put it back, it's gonna extract and basically clog where the fluid's coming from. So as soon as he brought it over, I cracked the bleeder on the caliper. Nothing was coming out, surprisingly. I told him to push on the brake, still nothing coming out. I took the brake hose where it's attached to the caliper, and I told him to push on the brake again, and hardly ever drips basically coming in very slowly. So I told him, okay. The third thing, I went and disconnected that rubber hose from the metal hose or metal pipe where they connect. And sure enough, the fluid from the metal hose, that they were coming so strong. When I tell them to push on the brake, boom, it just goes like crazy. It's a little dirty, but it still has a good flow. So I told him, okay, we have a problem here, and it is luckily it is not expensive. It is just the um, rubber hose on this side. I checked the other side; it was a little bit better, but it's still there's restriction in it. I went because he drove with the emergency light, with the emergency brakes for so long, and he was driving basically at first with the regular brakes, and he pretty much ran the brake pads on the rotors. So he damaged the brake pads, the rotors, and also, but he didn't have the money to buy all of that, the calipers, they got overheated, and the grommet on the front, the seal on the front that protects the cups from getting rusted, that's completely destroyed because of the heat. So I told him, okay, well, at least you have to put rotors and brake pads, obviously, and the calipers. If you have the money, I'd say throw them on there, although they're a few months old. But he said he didn't have money for all that, so we went with the brakes and rotors and the hoses. Of course, that's the main problem with the hoses. We put them back together. Everything was perfect. He could not believe that was the problem because the rubber hoses, and I guess I believe those are a problem for the Escape themselves because of the way they designed. But this goes for any vehicle. If you ever do brake job, you cannot let the caliper hanging down. I think most of the mechanics know this. They will hang the caliper with something and try to not put any pressure on that rubber hose. And then, so check for the rubber if you have a problem. That's the brakes are froze. Like I said, first is the fluid. Second, check for all the pipes, not just the rubber ones, but go from the caliper, crack it open, see if the bleeder lets anything out, and then go farther and farther and farther until you reach the ABS system. And then from the ABS system, you can disconnect the one at a time and let the guy push on the brake while the car is running and see if any fluid comes out. Even if the car is not running, it's no big deal, but when the car is running, there's power in the ABS system, and that makes it easy for the fluid to come out. Now, the sticky calipers, also frozen calipers, that could be caused by the pins, which is very common on all vehicles, I believe. Those pins, after years, so they're supposed to have a little bit grease in them, high temp grease, and they help the brake caliper go back and forth. And if those are rusted or dirty, they may not open as smooth as they should be, and the brakes will be locked, and the tire, pretty much the brakes with the rotor, they would start smoking, and you see all that nasty smell from the brake system. So check for those pins, take them out, clean them up really good if they're dirty. Also clean that hole, pinholes that where the pins go in. You have to clean it thoroughly, and you have to put a high temp grease. You cannot put any oil or anything that's flammable on the rotors, because this could cause in a fire situation. So you don't want that. It's hazards. So you want to use high temp, specifically made for the pins. Um, that sliding pins is a big deal. It happens a lot. It's very common. You want to clean them up really good, and even with a wire brush or something, brake cleaner, all that, you have to make sure they're 100%. And that happens is because the vehicle is old. The grommets, sometimes they're eaten up. They're not good. The water gets in there. The salt, especially if you live in Midwest or some place that where there's a snow and salt and all that, so they get rusted very quickly and they get damaged. So check for those, but really important this because of this weird situation that I really haven't happened to me before, other than this time. This is the first time it happened to me, so that was a little bit weird that this happened. So if you replace, and try for a different vehicles too, if you replace just the front brake pads and rotors, and then you have problems on the rear, then in my case it was a dirty fluid. And don't take that as a, some people would say, oh yeah, I don't think so. They just don't think about the fluid as a, I mean, that's what the brake work with. You have to have clean fluid and free, that has to flow free through the system. If that doesn't happen, then you're going to have problems with the brake system. And hopefully this would help you. I would go step by step to diagnose the stuff. I would not go and buy parts and then try your luck. Maybe it works, maybe not. If you diagnose things correctly, it might take a little bit of time, but at least you're going to save a lot of money. If you diagnose it good, most of the time you save a lot of money, because something like this guy was trying to buy ABS pump, and I told him, how could you buy ABS pump and you have not even looked at the brakes? And he was like, oh, I replaced this and this and this. Yeah, you replace parts that involve in locked up brakes. They cause locked up brakes sometimes. Yeah, you replace parts that go with the brake system, but is that the problem? So you have to go step by step to go through all of that. And then obviously you got the pump for the ABS pump, and then you got the master cylinder to make sure it is a clean and it's a free of any dirt. And then farther, if you want to, you still haven't fixed your brakes, you got to go farther and check for that brake cylinder and check the seal on the back, see if it's leaking, if it's a sticky, if it's because there is seals on the back. And then the brake booster too, if sometimes they get sticky and they go bad. But I would not go to the expensive fix, and it seems like a lot of people doing the same thing, going for the expensive part. Go to the ABS pump, go to the booster, not knowing, they just think, okay, I got a bad brakes, I got a sticky brake, so I gotta do that. Finally, what I want to say about this is that the brake pads, they have a groove. They go in, they have a slot, they go in back and forth. And when the vehicle is very old, sometimes when you put the brake pad on there with those metal plates, as a lot of cars have those metal plates to make it easy for the caliper to slide back and forth, not the caliper but the brake pads, they slide back and forth easily on those sand what is that, um, stainless steel, and they don't rust like the metal. So if you take if the brake pads is not sliding back and forth freely, that means you probably need to take those plates off, those um, stainless steel hardware parts for the brake pads, and then wire brush those grooves really good. And if you can, just buy the hardware, especially if you're doing brake pads too. You put a new brake pads. A lot of brake pads come with the hardware. If they don't, then um, ask the parts store to, if they sell them individually, or maybe they sell brake pads cheaper without the hardware and they sell them a little bit more expensive with the hardware. Buy the ones with the hardware, because if your vehicle is old, especially if your vehicle is old, you will need those. But you would wire brush those grooves really good, and then you put that in there, and then make sure the caliper goes back and forth. In rare cases that I had to shave off a little bit of the brake pads on the edges to make them go back and forth a little bit easy. You don't want them too loose because they're gonna make noise, they're gonna bounce and all that. So you have to weigh it to where they go in and out smoothly, and at the same time they don't have a play in them. And so that's, I believe that's all I gotta say about those brake issues. And yeah, but if your brake pads are sticky, don't put oil, don't put like DW40, because that's not gonna help you. That's actually more dangerous if you do that, because the brake system gets really hot, even if it's not locking up. It could lock up and get really hot and cause fire. But even if they don't lock up, still going and running on a highway and pushing on the brakes, this makes the rotor gets really hot. You don't want any oil, any DW40. None of the stuff should be there. So hopefully this is informative video for you, and hopefully you find out what's going on with your brake system. And I'll see you on the next video.